If you found this podcast, chances are you're a high achiever and you're successful. But now you're stuck and stressed, and you realize that everything you've created hasn't given you the fulfillment and the joy you thought it would. This is where we discuss the keys of high performance mindset and stepping into the next best version of yourself. Welcome to the Positive Persistence Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Positive Persistence Podcast. Today, we are joined by Ryan Moore, founder and president of On Track College Advising. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Ryan and I go back a couple years. Our kids played soccer with each other, and now we find ourselves in the basketball stands watching our kids play basketball as well at the high school level. Typically, for our listeners and viewers out there, you guys are listening in for stories and tips and strategies for maybe you. But today, we're going to flip the script a little bit and focus on your kids. And I'm not going to lie. This episode, I have some personal vested interest in. It's information that we're going to be talking about today because I've got a high schooler and we're getting ready to go to college here in a couple years. And this conversation that I had with Ryan at a coffee shop the other day, thought, I know there are probably a lot of listeners and viewers, moms and dads out there that need to know this information that Ryan has and his experience and able to tap into what he can provide. Because if you're anything like me, I'm at a loss. Or thinking I know what I need to know, but there is so much more that I don't know that is really super important, especially if you have an athlete, but even if you don't have an athlete, on what we need to know on how to traverse this journey from high school to college. So with that, Ryan, if you could give us just some insight on what your service is and why did you create this service in the first place?
Sure. So the business I run is called On Track College Advising, and it is designed to help students and student athletes find the right fit for them post high school. There are so many options for kids out there these days. And to be honest, families just don't know what they don't know until oftentimes it's too late, or they're forced to make a decision, or they get in a pinch and there's frustration at home. And I've seen that over the years develop in conversation with student athletes that I used to coach when I was at the collegiate level, kind of a seated at opposite side of the table, so to speak. And so helping those families and students figure out that right fit place for them through my experience is the reason that I really started this up. I had a student athlete myself who, after I had retired from the university, moved on thinking the grass was going to be greener somewhere else, and ultimately found herself frustrated by the move and not knowing what those next steps were going to be, and realized pretty quickly that she's going to have to move a second time to find what was the right fit for her. And we talked through that, and that was a joy to see her find that right fit finally after she moved on from where I was at before, and have success. And I know she's there right now. And so just experiencing that and the joy that I received just helping someone else out was really the main reason that I got started in doing this as it is right now.
If you can give us your, what I like to call your ETR, your earn the right. Like, why do you have the expertise that you have? Why do you have the right to talk about this topic? And give us a little background in how you kind of earn your stripes, if you will, in gaining all this knowledge.
Sure. So for the first part of my career, 20 years, in fact, I spent as the track and field coach at a university. And in that time, I had opportunities to connect with those students that were looking to find their right place and right opportunity, and had them come through the door, and really had experience connecting with them, sitting down with them, helping them figure out why the school I was at was the right choice for them, and helping them compare the different schools that they were looking at as well. And so through my time and experience working with our admissions office, with the financial aid office, helping with housing situations, and just overall college life experience over that 20-year period, gained a lot of knowledge in how to do it right. And so when I left the university, I had all that knowledge with me and was like, all right, how am I going to put this to work for the students that are looking to figure out whether or not that school is going to be a right fit for them?
Mhm.
And honestly, that's where on track college advising was born from.
In your on track call advising, I mean, you call on your well, I mean, let's just break it down. I mean, you were a D1 athlete yourself, and then you were a D1 coach. Like you said, you've been in the industry for 20 years, having extensive knowledge of the process you kind of just talked about. And I imagine in that time, you have probably a vast network of connections through, I would imagine, all over the country with different universities and programs.
Yeah. So I was a D3 athlete, which I think really honestly helped me go from that level of play to competing and then following it up with coaching at the Division 1 level. And yes,
Boom.
in 20 years, you spend a lot of time traveling all over the country, seeing different schools, experiencing the campus, getting to feel for what the students are like there, connecting with coaches at that level. And so that was a huge part of it too, is I knew, okay, through that time and experience that I've had, I've gotten a chance to check out all these places and get to know what they're all about. And so, because of that as well, I was able to like take that and say, okay, well, coupled with the knowledge that I have, it's not that different from place to place, but helping the students figure out what their non-negotiables are and work that for them.
I'm so glad you brought up D3 because I think that a lot of parents, when we have our parent goggles on and we're talking about a student athlete and we're looking at our kids and we're thinking that they've got the potential to go D1, that's the focus. And we don't even think about D2 or D3 possibilities. Do you find that in your experience at all that the focus is usually put on that D1 quote unquote potential?
Yeah, I think, any parent who's worth his salt thinks their kid is the greatest thing since sliced bread and
Right.
ultimately has the best interest for them and sees them in a different light. Where the reality is, not every kid is going to go a Division 1 route. The truth is that there are thousands of schools across the country, and there's no one right fit for any student. But if you know how to look for those places, identify them, they might even be 20 minutes from your house and you've never thought about it. But if you find the right fit for you, that's where you're going to find success in the end. And so it, to me, doesn't make a difference D1, D2, D3. They're great athletes across the board at those levels. And if you're wanting to compete in those and it's the right place for you, athletics should be a piece of it, not the entire reason that you're going there. And so making sure, again, that those boxes are checked, that you're doing your due diligence and finding the right fit home for you is the most important thing. So don't get caught up with Division 1.
Right. And I know that you have a process that you go through with this service in your company that is actually like an 8-step process to help students or and just to be clear, you don't just help student athletes,
Correct.
you help students in general, correct?
Yeah, my services are open to any student, whether they're engaged in band or orchestra or or track or whatever sport. It's open to anyone. Honestly, the focus largely overall is geared toward the student athlete, but the process is the same as far as the admissions, the financial aid, figuring out those non-negotiables, and helping them navigate the process to understanding costs. Those things are universal, and so that's the ability that I've got, is to be able to sit down and talk with those families about those things, and through that process come to a full and better understanding of what's actually being offered out there. I think a lot of times, like you're saying, families get caught up in cost of attendance and they look at one thing, and the realities are that if a school is $100,000, it's not going to cost that in the end to them. There's scholarships, there's other opportunities and ways to drive those costs down for families. And knowing that and knowing where to find that information and how to get it is what I specialize in.
Yeah, and that I think is super helpful because, if you're just online doing some research and you're finding out what tuition is and you see that and you get that sticker shock and like, there's no way I can afford to go there, or there's no way that my parents can afford to send me here. But you don't realize that there are ways to make it happen. to go with what you just said before, like you don't know what you don't know. And that's why I think that your skill and expertise is so valuable for students and families when they're looking into this huge uh, financial we won't call it a burden, but this huge financial expenditure that they're going to be on, and really the next phase in their child's life, which is super important. But I want to break down the process that you have for that selection success, that 8-step process, and kind of talk about that. And I was hoping that you kind of shed some light on the discover, identify, build, apply, engage, compare, align, select
Exactly.
process.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, the first part of that is the discovery process, and that's sitting down with the student and really working through what they're excited about, what makes them tick, and help them figure out who they are first. If a kid's not ideal for college, that's the right place to find that out, honestly. And instead of wasting time and energy doing a search, and if there's something else that they're passionate about that they should pursue, that's the place to figure that out instead of, again, wasting all the time and money eventually in the end if they end up going and leaving. So, helping them figure out who they are, and then identifying the criteria really that are the most important things for them, and what they want out of a school. It could be, the education that they're going to get obviously is the most important piece, but does it have a program that do they have a program that they're looking to go into? Are they an engineer? Are they a nurse? Are they, looking into going to counseling and becoming a counselor? So, helping them navigate that and figure that piece out and identifying what's the most important thing to them. It could be weather, it could be, a multitude of different things, but having those conversations with the students and helping them work through and verbalize those things so that they get it out and you write it down and figure out, okay, now we can start to really look at and build a list of schools based off of the things that you're telling us are important to you, and go and find what fits, right? Those lists that we build should match all of the criteria or most of the criteria, because in the end, like I said before, athletics, if it's a piece of your story, shouldn't be the only reason that you're going to school. You're looking to get a degree, you're looking to move on, you're looking to connect with people, you're looking to, build relationships with professors and learn as much as you can in the time that you're there. And so if one piece is taken away from you, say you're an athlete and you get injured or something like that, you better have enough stuff that's going to keep you there. So, um, the next step in the process after you've gotten your list of schools together is to apply to those, right? And I can help with the application process. We look at the deadlines, we look at what the SAT, ACT scores that are needed to, apply and get accepted are going to be. We look at the price tag. I just encourage families very early on, have that conversation with your student athletes or your students and talk candidly about them, about what you're willing to pay for school and what you're willing to let your student, or what you're yourself willing to take on as far as a loan to get them through that process. And that will help narrow down your selections pretty quickly. Now, like I said before, no one pays full price for a car. You're not going to pay full price to go to, a university or college that you're looking at. And so knowing the ways to look for and find out what your actual net price is going to be is pretty important piece in that step. And so I've got a way that we can compare apples to apples in the end. So if you have a school that's $100,000 on paper and a school that's $20,000 on paper, there's a vast difference there. But knowing how to go through and figure out the net price and look at what you might be offered as far as a scholarship goes, as academics, what you might qualify for in loans from that perspective, and all those things factor into driving that price down. And in the end, if $100,000 school is going to give you $90,000 in aid, and a $10,000 school is only going to give you 1,000, it's going to make a difference. It's the education that you're going to get at one may weigh way more than the other. So it's important to take a look at those things. So, and then the next step for me is engaging. It's connecting with those communities that you're interested in going to. So making those visits, learning how to connect with and talk to the admissions office, prepping for those visits that you're going to take, having interviews. in house with me who sat in the other seat and said, okay, as a coach, this is what I want to know from you. What can you tell me? And working through and ways to connect with those coaches as well so that you're going to get responses back from them. People think, hey, I'm a student athlete. The coach is going to want to talk to me no matter what. Well, there's a recruiting calendar and there's ability that they have in certain times of the year where they can and cannot talk to you. And so helping to identify those things for them too and in that gate an engagement process will really help to, solidify or at least drive down the the type of school that you want to look at, the places that you're connecting with, and know who's really interested in you. So, and then like I said, it's the next step is the compare piece of it. And so it's taking that apples to apples approach, looking at all of that information, looking at the communications that you're getting from them to see who's really interested in you, what they're saying to you, how they want you to be a part of their programs,
Yeah.
whether it's the academic side or athletic side. I mean, those are important pieces for families to understand and for a student to feel like they're wanted at a place is a huge deal. And so helping them identify those things and in that comparison process and work through that, I think is important. And that's really the align piece of it as well. Does it meet my needs? Are we covering everything? Do I feel comfortable on campus when I'm there? Every campus has a different feel. I know that just this past week we were in Wisconsin and for a volleyball tournament for my daughter, and I drove through Bloid's campus. I'd never been on campus there before. I'm familiar with them. They're in a conference with a few other friends of mine who are coaches, and hey, what is this place all about? And so it had a different feel walking around there from where I went to school, and good, bad, or other that's up for the student to decide. But if they don't go and experience that, that's a big piece of it. So, and then ultimately, hey, it's going to help them make that final decision to select that school that's the right fit for them. Comfortable, you know, passionate about the place that they're going to end up, and then really feeling confident that they've made the right choice in the end.
It's time to ask yourself, when was the last time you prioritized you? Did you know that research shows that nearly 85% of high performers struggle to maintain a performance mindset while juggling the demands of work and personal life? Those who actively prioritize their performance mindset and personal growth are 30% more likely to achieve their goals in business and life. If you're feeling crippling stress and anxiety, or if you're feeling guilty when you take a moment for yourself, or if you're stuck in the grind and feeling burnt out, you're not alone. Many of us yearn for more, but struggle with the fear of being judged or feeling selfish. And you want to step into the next best version of yourself. That's why I created the Rinse Method, which got me from paraplegic to marathon runner. Backed by science-based proven strategies and now customized for high performers like you. If you're stuck and stressed and want clear steps that you can implement today to move forward, make sure you visit thepositivepersistence.com to download our free Rinse PDF. That is an extensive process that you've put together, and there's a lot that goes into that. But I know I asked you this question before when you were telling me about your business and what you do and your expertise, and I asked you. I think this is a valid question for our listeners and viewers. How do you differ from a high school counselor or college guidance office?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's the time spent doing the research alongside the student athletes or the students and helping them in that process more often. High
Yeah.
school student counselors, they're great. I mean, they're a wonderful resource for your students, but there may be 5, 10 of those, and it depends on how many students you have on campus. Are you going to get the attention that you need from them to feel fully informed and be able to make those decisions? If you're a student athlete, the high school guidance counselor may say, hey, it's great that you want to go play, but often those students are looking to coaches that they're connecting with to help with that process. And to be fair, their job is to coach, and they may have some other full time job on top of that. And they don't have the time to sit and work through all of those steps with a specific student athlete. And so my service is spending that time with them, connecting with those students, getting a better understanding of who they are as a whole, and then helping them through that process individually, one on one. And I'm not afraid to pick up the phone and make some phone calls on their behalf. I know how to connect with coaches. I was one for years. I know what the, admissions counselors want to talk about. I'm happy to pick up the phone and have conversations with them. So I'm an advocate for that student along the way to making that decision.
Right. So more personalized, basically attention for that student or that student athlete to help them make the connections they need to make and make the decisions that they need to make. Because just from my own experience, I remember the monumental pressure that you feel on making a decision and picking a school that you are planning on spending the next 4 years of your life at, and they're supposed to mold you for the rest of your life. I mean, just the amount of anxiety and pressure around this decision is huge. And to have somebody to basically hold your hand through the process, I think again is an invaluable asset to have, especially when you're trying to navigate this situation.
You're absolutely right. And a lot of times, families want to be that person. So mom and dad want to be the person to hold the hand. But sometimes mom and dad have a different idea of what the most important piece is for school. And so, that's where the tension lies at the house. And
Yeah.
I can help find a common ground for both mom and dad and the student.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, many times I'm sure that there are differing opinions on reasons or ideas about which college that the student wants to go to, as opposed to the parent wanting them to go to. But as we talk about making these decisions, when should a student or their parents start thinking about these decisions that they're going to have to make?
Sure. To be fair, the earlier the better. I think, ninth grade is when student athletes can, begin to be recruited. And that doesn't mean that coaches are calling or having conversations on the phone with you or anything like that. But, um, you know, beginning to think about and ask those questions to your students of, hey, this is something that you need to start thinking through. And let's have some open conversations about what you're excited about. I mean, freshman year is about figuring out, hey, how do I be a high school student? And so those next couple years are really where you get into the, hey, this is a program that I'm interested. The more experiences you get in, you know, the math class or the science class, you go through various levels of that, and you might find, hey, this is really exciting to me. And so as you get to sophomore year, I think it's really important, especially in the second semester, which my son is in right now. You start to have more and more conversations around, hey, what do you want to do post high school? What do you want to do in life when you graduate college? Because you're going to do it for the next 30 years of your life, or you're going to be in a job that you're putting time and energy into, and you might as well enjoy what you're doing. And so having those conversations, getting them to flush those things out and think critically about those next steps is an important piece in the sophomore year. And then summertime, I think, is a great opportunity for folks to go and look around on campuses. I always encourage people to see it at least twice. You're not going to have the same feel in the summer as you will in the fall or the spring when the campus is alive with student activity. But you are going to be able to walk around and experience what it's like in that area, and the outside area too, I think, plays a factor in it as well. And so taking the time to do that into sophomore year so that they get experience looking at, hey, this is a big school or this is a small school. And my son and I were talking last night. He's like, man, somebody has to walk 20 minutes across campus. And I was like, well, some places have a bus because the campus is so long, they got to get across. So helping them understand, because their world is so small at this point, what's out there, what those opportunities may look like. And then, hey, do I really like this feel, or is it too big or too small for me? And then in that junior year, it's those conversations where, okay, we're really narrowing these things down a little bit more. There may be, if you're an athlete, some connectivity to coaches, their interest, and really taking the time to get back on campuses and experience what that is life, or what life is like there with those student athletes or students, and doing it overnight, and but knowing what to ask, what to look for, and what to listen for when you're on campus is a huge piece of it. You're going to gain as much knowledge as you can in that short period of time to be able to make those decisions. And so knowing what to ask and figure out while you're there is an important thing. Senior year, ultimately at that point, you're narrowing things down quite a bit. You may have your small list of schools that you're interested in. You go back, you explore. If you're a student athlete at a high level, you may be lucky enough to have an official visit where they pay for you to come and check out campus again and be a part of, some team activities and experience what life is like as a student athlete, doing an overnight with them. And then ultimately by this time of year, so by March, you've made your decision. You're comfortable with what you've chosen. You have opportunities to compete. Hey, I'm going to get a scholarship, or I'm not, but I'm still going to be able to continue my sport or whatever it is that you are enjoying and you love and you're passionate about, and you're comfortable with those decisions. And then the next steps, happen where okay, we're making a deposit. We're signing up for the next steps for the spring and figuring out how to schedule for classes and all of those pieces, and then you're off.
Ryan, can you give us some insight on what college and universities are looking for in a student? Let's just say in a student athlete outside of athletics,
Yeah,
or even a student that's not an athlete. What are they looking for outside of just your GPA?
yeah. I think honestly, for me, when I was in that coaching seat, I was looking for a well-rounded student. It didn't mean that that student was only engaged with one sport. They may have done multiple sports, so that their training age wasn't, super big, and um, they were engaged outside of sports as well, connecting through, hey, maybe it's a Boys and Girls Club where they're volunteering, or they're involved with Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts or whatever, and they're an Eagle Scout. That those things stand out on a resume when you're applying for a school, for an athletics resume and for your application. Those are big pieces. So the involvement in a church or any type of service organization that you can connect in with. I want to see that a kid can verbalize themselves what they want to do. A lot of times we would have families come on and mom and dad spend the time talking and talking and talking for the student athlete on their behalf. But I want to know that you can handle yourself and have some conversation with the adults in the room, and that you're going to thrive here because of that. And so being prepared for those sorts of things, having a well-rounded background, and just an excitement about the next steps in your life. I think that if you can show that to folks when you're engaging with them, that will feed what they want from a university perspective. They want a vibrant community. They want people that are willing to engage and connect, and I think that's a big step.
So being involved in extracurriculars is an important part of making yourself, I guess, for lack of a better word, attractive to college and universities for enrollment
Yeah,
purposes.
absolutely.
And speaking of enrollment, we've been talking this whole time about pre-enrollment services, but you also provide post-enrollment services. And I was wondering if you could tell us what those are and why those are important.
Sure, especially for freshmen as they're coming in. It's a new experience, a new environment. They're away from home. They don't have mom and dad necessarily there. Their friends may be at a different school. I mean, they may have one or two people that they know in a place, and that can be
Right.
a big transition for students. And so helping them figure out ways to engage with the community that they're in is going to help them just connect overall, feel more comfortable on campus, feel like it's home for them, and ultimately help to keep them there.
Mhm.
It could be something too with a student athlete, right? Not just the general student, but a student athlete who may be struggling with a team or connectivity to, teammates or a coach, and they're feeling really down on things. Well, like, I've sat in that other seat, and like, here are some strategies that we can give you in order to be able to engage with your team a little bit better. Or, hey, have you actually thought about the perspective from the coach and what they're actually trying to say? They may not be the greatest communicator in what they're trying to get across, but like having a different perspective from someone who's sat in that seat can see, okay, yeah, hey, maybe you need to work a little bit harder or work on connecting with your team, and here are some ways to do that. Here are some things that you can do to just move that needle a little bit. And it's not going to happen overnight, but step by step by step, building those habits and getting those things done and connecting with those people are going to help you engage more in your campus, and then your overall experience is going to grow because of it, and that can help with that process too.
I think that again, I keep using this word invaluable, but that's what it is. I mean, to have somebody hold your hand through the process of weeding through all of the do's and don'ts of college or university selection, and then also having that helping hand on the other side once you get there and helping you fit in. I know that as a collegiate athlete myself, freshman year, I mean, you're trying to what I call FIO. You're trying to figure it out, and you're trying to fit in practice, and now your new class load, and trying to figure out how you get around the university and find all the things. But to have someone on the other side to help you kind of with, I guess, if nothing else, some of the emotional side of things of how to fit in and communicate, especially if you're an athlete, because that's your focus, to be able to communicate with that coach and fit in with that team, I think is a huge value add. So that's awesome. Well, Ryan, I want to thank you for taking the time to be on the show, and I want to give our listeners and viewers an opportunity to find out more about you and more about your services. So where can they do that?
You can find me at ontrackcollegeadvising.com. I've got an Instagram page as well where we kind of share some of the happenings and give some insider information along the way as well. But would love to connect with those that are open and interested, and just trying to navigate that process. I'd love to help.
Awesome. I want to thank all of our listeners and viewers for tuning into this episode. And as we always say, stay positive, stay persistent, and remember, mindset is everything. We'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in and being part of the Positive Persistence family. We're having a great time creating this content, and we truly hope it inspires you to embrace positivity and persistence in your own journey. If this podcast episode inspired you or entertained you, scroll down, hit those stars, and leave a comment. Your 5-star reviews and shares encourage us and help us grow the show. So until next time, stay positive, stay persistent, and remember, mindset is everything.